Elmton Residential, 15th to 19th of July. Really tonight is just to run through a few more of the details, just to make sure that everyone's aware of what's going on the trip and you've got all the information that you need. It does also give you the opportunity at the end to ask me questions, either as a whole or come and see me afterwards, to do it individually if you prefer. If I could see Hugo's mum very briefly at the end regarding diet and so on, that'd be very useful. Just on the board is the staffing of the trip. There is a colour coding system which I'll explain in a moment. There's myself, Mr. Martin, the head of ICT, Miss Finch, one of the Year 5 class teachers, Mrs. Catlin, head of science, Miss Albone, obviously head of Year 5 and Year 5 class teacher, Mrs. Gibbon, one of the high-level teaching assistants, Mrs. Graham, one of the teaching assistants, Miss Woodhouse, one of the teaching assistants, and Miss Coles, one of the teaching assistants. One of the good things for me is each year we go, I think this is the 5th year we've been, we've had lots of people who've gone and been before. The 6 that are in blue are people who've been before, either 5 times or 4 times, or I think in Miss Captain's case once. So lots of the teachers are experienced with the centre, so kind of we know the routine there, we know particularly what to look out for, both at the site and in the activities. You have had a copy of the itinerary, but I'll just have a quick run through so your children are aware of what they're going to be doing. On the Monday, just before that I do apologise, if at any point I put the wrong date up or the wrong month for the wrong year, it's always that previous year's one. So if it says March or Friday or 2012, it's just that I've not changed it. On the Monday, we depart for Hamilton at 9 o'clock. Your children can come in by the school buses if it suits you to. You can bring them in, whichever suits you best. Takes us about 3 hours. We have one stop en route. For those of you familiar with the way to Cromer, we stop at Bath and Mills and use the cafe and toilet facilities there. We normally get there around about 12, 12:30, depending upon the traffic and so on. Also depending whether we get away sharp at 9 o'clock. When we get there, Mrs. Graham, her priority job is to contact the school to let them know that we've got there, and then they will send out from the office a text message just to confirm that we've got there safely. So around about lunchtime that will come through to you. We have our lunch there at 12:45, all being well, it'll be a nice sunny day, and we'll be out on the field there having lunch. If not, we'll be having it in the dining area. In the afternoon, we get your children involved in some team building activities. Evening meal tends to be typically around about 5:30. It does vary from day to day, as we'll see in a moment, by about 15, 20 minutes, depending upon the activities you're doing. Some of the activities are longer days, so it affects the evening meal time. We have a talk in the evening and then wander out on a twilight safari around part of the grounds of Felbrick Hall, a National Trust property, directly over the road from the field centre. Each night we have an evening drink, hot chocolate and a biscuit before bedtime. Normally that evening drink's around about 9:30, some days a little bit earlier, some days a bit later, again depending upon the evening activity. So on the Monday we all do the same thing. That's not the same every day. What we'll be doing is, and I'll talk about the activity groups later on, but for lots of the activities we're in 2 halves, and every child will do the same things, but some will do it in one batch and others in another. On the Tuesday, one group does one thing, one does the other. We'll just concentrate on the yellow side, we'll pick up the green one later on. Breakfast is normally 8 o'clock. We get our instructions for the day, brief the children what they're doing, make sure they've got the correct equipment, the correct clothing, sunscreen, all those kind of things. One group will be doing something called the Monster Trail. I cannot say no more about that, otherwise I'll have to kill them. And I might get in trouble for that. Lunch at 1 o'clock. We then have some feedback from what they've done in the morning. We do some pirate activities, which I'm not going to tell you a great deal about, because it's something this year we're going for an extra day than last year, so I've not done those before. And I hate talking about things that we haven't done, because I don't know so much about them. I will be having discussions with the field centre over the next couple of weeks regarding particularly the pirate activities, the evening activity that day, and the what this group are doing that day, the trip to the Broads, because that's what we've not done before. We have our evening activity. I've got that on there twice for some reason. And then we have a slightly earlier night on the Tuesday. What the other half are doing on the Tuesday is what this group are doing on the Wednesday. We're going to the Norfolk Broads and visiting the National Park there and going on the Broads themselves. In the afternoon, we do two activities where, again, we break the children down into smaller groups. We do some work at the Cromer church itself, including going up the tower, which gives a lovely view of the town. No, it didn't the other year when it was all foggy, but normally it does. And then we do some team skills and map skills around the town, navigating around the town, finding various places of interest to enable them to solve the puzzle. Evening meal and so on. We go to Splash Swimming Pool in Sheringham on the Wednesday evening. As I said at the original meeting, I don't really like swimming pools. Actually, Splash, for those of you who haven't been there, is much nicer than, for example, Oasis in Bedford. And the really good thing about it is that we have sole users there. So when we're in there, we're the only people in there. So it's a nice, safe environment for the pool. It's fully manned by their staff, and additionally there are members of staff in the pool. If any of your children are particularly weak swimmers or non-swimmers, and you haven't notified us on anything so far, it'd be very useful if you could either let me know at the end or send a note in the next few days. It just means if you've got somebody, particularly if you've got a child who you know that they're not particularly strong swimmer and their confidence is higher than their ability, it just means that where we've got 82 children there, it helps us focus on certain individuals just to be extra vigilant of those children. Because of the activity there, they do tend to have a later night on Wednesday. On the Thursday, they're all back together, and we'll be going to Blakely Point to see the seals, to walk across the marsh, to explore the dunes and shingle habitats, and generally a very tiring day for the children, lots of walking involved, but one of their highlights normally. This year, because of the tides, we did have quite an early start, and we do it in the reverse. So if any children who've gone before, they caught the boat out to Blakely Point, walked along the spit, and then across the marsh. Because of the tides, we did it the other way around. That's how it gets in. In the evening, we have what I could describe as my favourite part of the week, but I would be completely lying. Here's the disco. I normally try and man the tuck shop there because it keeps me busy with the children buying too many drinks and sweets, and it seems to go quickly when I'm doing that. If, like me, your children aren't greatly keen on discos, actually it's not a problem, because yes, there is the room where the disco's in, but actually quite a few of the children like to just hang around with their mates and have a chat outside. So obviously as long as it's nice weather. The area around the hall that we use on site for the disco means that those children who don't want to be in there with the loud music and so on can still buy their sweets and their drinks, but then go outside to a slightly quieter environment. But unfortunately it's always popular, so I never get to strike it off the list. Our last day, we're doing lots of activities on the beach between Cromer and West Runton, or between West Runton and Cromer. We do some rock pooling, and in recent years there's been lots of life in those rock pools. We do some work with fossils on the beach. We discuss the glaciation that's occurred there over time. We look at the erosion that's ongoing there, and end up at Cromer Pier to have lunch on the pier before setting back home. On the way back, we do have a brief stop, but only a toilet stop, not a use the cafe, etc. type stop. And hopefully, normally I put on there we'll be back at 4:30, and then you normally get a text about 4 o'clock saying we're going to be about 5 o'clock. And this year I sort of thought it would be a bit more realistic, and it will probably be 5 o'clock when we're here. If for any reason it's different, if we're earlier or later, once again, we'll get a message through the school messaging service. These numbers are on the letter over there, so don't worry about writing them down or anything. In the event of emergency, during school time, the best thing to do is to ring school. They will then contact the field centre or myself or one of the team. Outside of school hours, there is an emergency number there at the centre. It is only for emergencies. If you do need to contact us through either of those methods, then either the centre or the school will get in touch with one of our team through mobiles, etc. Rooms. There's a probably on there. It may change slightly. There are 3 buildings that we use on site for rooming the children. What I tend to do, particularly because the girls' rooms are quite big rooms, and if I ask the girls to get into a group of this size, that size, it doesn't work. So what I do is I get one day all the girls to come and get themselves into friendship groups of 3s, 4s, 5s and so on. And then another day do the same with the boys. When I've got the friendship groups, then what I do is I put those groups together. If I need a room of 8 and I've got 2 4s, I'll put 2 4s together. Because if I try and get groups of 8 and 7, it doesn't work. So it does mean that your child will be sharing with their friendship group. It does mean that there'll probably be more than one friendship group in the room. I do speak with Miss Albone, as head of year, beforehand, to also check on any combinations that I need to avoid. So if Fred doesn't get on with Frank, and that's a bad combination, I will know that's not to put their 2 friendship groups together. If any parent has any particular concerns that you want to raise about that, either if you can get your child to bring a note in or if you want to grab me at the end, I'll make a note of that. Just to avoid combinations where you know what would be good for the children. The boys' rooms tend to be slightly smaller than the girls' rooms. And all being well, I may have to make one change. They are in separate buildings. If I do have to make a change, it will be that the boys are downstairs in one of the buildings and the girls are upstairs. But it's likely to remain like that. So the girls are in the main building and the boys are in the 2 buildings. There are staff in each of those buildings. Activity groups. It says it nicely up there, I'll explain what it means in real life. These will be put together to help the children develop new relationships outside of their friendship groups. And that is true, but also, in the past we found that if Fred's with his best mate in a group during the daytime, in a dorm, actually being together for 24 hours for 5 days isn't very good for them. Even the best of friends sometimes fall out. So what we tend to do is, in terms of the activity groups, is they're not necessarily within the friendship groups that they are within the dorms. So within the dorms they're in those groups, but in the activities they're spread out a bit more, maybe working with people who they're less used to working with. Again, I'll try and avoid those combinations where I know it's a bad combination for either of the children involved. But it does mean that if Fred's best mate is Frank and they're in the dorm together, they probably won't be in an activity group together. Going back to the journey up there, it takes about 3 hours, 3.5 hours, depending on traffic. We stop, as I said before. We come back about 5 o'clock. It would be handy if you could pick them up nice and promptly, please. We go on 2 coaches. In order just to control things, we need to make sure we know which children are on which coach, so your child will be allocated to a set coach. That will be done around their friendship groups. So if I know there's 4 people who want to be in a dorm together, they will be on the same coach, they can sit together. It may be that for how we check them on the bus, they're not in a group with their best mate, but they can still sit with their best mate on that bus. We can't then move them between coaches because it means we lose control of knowing who's on which bus. And then if one of the buses broke down, for example, it would then make things very difficult because we wouldn't really have a clear record of who was where. So the children will know and be told which bus they're on. We don't use a local coach company, we use the coach company owned by the field centre. It just makes it smoother, it means they're more flexible to our needs. If we're running half hour late on what we're doing in Cromer on the afternoon, but we come home, we haven't got to worry about it because it's the same company effectively who are picking us up. It also is handy for the luggage and so on. It works very well. I did talk about this at the first and probably second meeting. There is 24-hour CCTV on site. There is a centre supervisor on till 11 in the evening. Before the evening supervisor goes, they do a pre-departure check, making sure all the downstairs windows are closed, etc. The gates are locked at night. The building is secure from the outside, but obviously is openable from the inside with push bars and so on in case of the event of fire, etc. All of our staff have access between the buildings, so we can move between them as required. There are staff from Auburn in each of the buildings. The centre staff have a nighttime duty instructor who is on call. I shouldn't say this because it should probably happen, but for the last 4 years we've never needed to do that. Additionally, the owners of the field centre live on site, so in an absolute emergency, they're there as well. The first thing that happens when we get there is your children get taken to their rooms and we get settled in and sorted and so on. The second thing we do is the children receive a safety talk on arrival. It's important that throughout the trip, not just during then, that they listen to the field centre staff and follow their instructions. That's almost more important than following the teacher's instructions because they're the experts there. We've got lots of experience of it, but if their centre staff is saying something, it's really critical that your children follow those instructions. And we always find that they have very good relationships with the children, and the children do follow, but it's really important. Spending money. You'll be pleased to hear this. There is a great deal of opportunity for your children to spend money while they're away. Now, I know they're very good at it, but there isn't a great deal of opportunity. There are really only 2 opportunities, and I've not changed one of the words there. Ignore Sunday night disco, we're not there on the Sunday. There is the cafe on the way up, selling a variety of beverages, foods, ice creams, snacks, and all those horrible things. And there's the disco on the Thursday night. There is a field centre shop there. It does have souvenirs for the children as well. They often like to buy the bookmarks and the rulers and the pencils and that kind of stuff. And we do that at the same time as the disco. I have put a recommended £10 maximum up there. I'm sure they could spend much more if they tried. But realistically, if they've got £10 spending money, that's normally more than adequate. If they want money for the journey up, they need to have that money. If they want money for the Thursday night disco, then it needs to be brought in on the morning of the trip in sealed, named envelopes. And if the boys could hand it to Miss Woodhouse, she'll log it in, and she'll issue it on the Thursday night, and the same with the girls giving it to Miss Graham. That system does work well, because it does mean that the children don't misplace things, or don't misplace the money. They'll misplace plenty of other things instead, but they don't misplace the money, and so when they've got their spending opportunity, they've got their money. What normally happens is we get to the services and somebody says, "Oh, can I have some? My money's was in the envelope," and it's very difficult then because it's possibly in the whole of the other luggage and so on. So if we can make sure any money for the journey up, the children have with them. Any money for the Thursday night disco, if you want it looked after, in an envelope and handed in the morning. Medicines. Mrs. Gibbon tends to look after the medicines. Mrs. Gibbon does look after the medicines. What happens is there are some children who've got greater medical needs than others. And she tends to take charge of those with the greater need. And the group leaders of the others deal with the sort of hay fevers and so on in this world. And it does mean that those who have got more critical needs, and I know everybody's medicine is important, otherwise they wouldn't have it, but those with the greater criticality, Mrs. Gibbon takes on, and the rest are spread out. That tends to work pretty well. It is important that your child also takes responsibility, as we do spend a lot of time chasing children to come and get their medicine when they should be coming to us to get their medicine. I have got all the PIC forms back, the consent forms with all details on. I do realise, particularly at their age, the medicine they may be taking changes. It's important that if there's anything that's changed between you filling that form in and the trip, that you let us know what they now take, when they take it, and so on, and why they take it. And that way we've got a complete record of what they need. It means we can manage it better, and also it means we don't have to ring you up to check that it's okay to give whatever medicine to your child. Where are we going? Consent forms were due back on the 7th of June. I put that on there this morning when I updated this, but then I got the last 4 back this morning. The major and minor bits about Mrs. Gibbon, she takes on the major ones and ensures that the minor ones are dealt with by the team. Things that the children don't need. There's lots of crosses there. I'll have a quick slurp of coffee while I have a quick moment. I see that was popular. Thank you. I'll start with a good one. They don't need footballs, because there is an opportunity to play football, but there are footballs to use. So I really don't want 46 footballs going there. They don't need to take football. Doesn't mean there isn't opportunity for them to play football in their free time, both boys and girls, so I should have said 82 footballs. But there's no point in taking footballs, please. Phones. It's really important that children don't have phones. I was away the week. I was away, was it last week? Time flies, I think it was last week I was away. On the first day, one of the children had to go to hospital for something. Because none of the children had phones, I knew that the way that Mum was going to find out, or Dad was going to find out, was from me ringing them up, just explaining what had happened, making sure they were aware of what was happening, everything was okay. What I wouldn't want to have happened is one of the friends, in about 5 minutes spare time, ring up his mum and say, "Oh, what's happened to Johnny?" Johnny's mum being friends, you know, and passing it on. It's important that if there's something to inform you of, we're able to do it. There isn't normally, but it is important that children don't have mobile phones. Games consoles. There isn't the opportunity for the children to use them. They're expensive. The children are very good at losing things. And also, the one time we did allow games consoles on the coach, the children spent most of the journey, rather than chatting with their mates, falling out about whose turn it is next. So no games consoles, please. I do put things on there that I don't really think are necessary, because sometimes on some trips they appear when I didn't expect them. There's no need for laptops, no need for iPads. I'm sure your children wouldn't expect to be allowed gum because they're not allowed in school, and it's horrible anyway. Energy drinks. There's no need for your children to have energy drinks. They've got too much energy sometimes anyway. No electrical items, chargers, hair straighteners. Again, there's not really time for them to do their hair. Think of boys. And it says no aerosols, because the aerosols can set off the fire detectors, which isn't a good thing. Music players. If children want music players for the journey up, I'm not going to say they can't. I personally think, because of the length of the journey, it's only 3 hours, split into 1.5 hours, they normally have quite enough fun chatting around with their mates. But if they want music players for the way up and the way back, that's fine. It is the only time we expect to see them. The other coach journeys are only 15, 20 minutes and so on. They don't need them then. I would encourage cameras, but they are at your child's risk as well. I'm not going to go through the whole of the kit list, because you've already had the kit list, I think, twice. If you've lost the kit list, then please contact the office and I'll make sure your child gets another one. It is important that they have suitable walking shoes. Sort of flimsy shoes aren't particularly good, particularly when we're walking across the spit blatantly across the pebbles. They do need kind of sturdy footwear. They will need a waterproof though. It doesn't normally rain when we go there. They will need their swimsuit. They will need towels, ideally two, one for swimming, one for everything else. Toiletries, I'm not always sure all the boys always use them. Really important that they've got a water bottle, and within reason, the bigger the water bottle, the better. When we're out on blanket, we are out all day. If they've got a 25 centilitre water bottle, it's not really adequate. If they've got a 75 centilitre water bottle, that's better. The bigger the better. If they've got two 33s or whatever, that's fine. I'm optimistic that sunscreen and sun hat will be essential. It's hard for us to keep your child safe from the dangers of the sun if they haven't got their sun hat. I think it says it on the letter, but can you make sure that on the Monday, even if it's raining, your child comes to school wearing their sun hat? If they feel bad about it, they can carry it in their hand. That way we can check all of your children if they've got a sun hat before they leave. And at least if they haven't, we know they haven't, and can try and do something about it before we go somewhere where they need it. Pocket money you've mentioned. It says about £1 coin to operate the swimming lockers. They don't actually need that because we are the only people there. We tend to just use the lockers and not lock them. If you really want your child to lock the locker, they'll need £1 for it. But in the past, nobody ever does, and we've never had an issue. I would recommend the big black bin bag for wet, dirty clothes. I think on the version that you've had, I've crossed the torch out. The torch is on their kit list for the Twilight Walk, but because of the time of year we go, there's no point in them having the torch. And actually they're a distraction, so I'd rather they didn't have torches. They don't need them in their rooms. I think they're shining at each other when they shouldn't be. So torches off the list would be good. And every day they get breakfast, they get lunch, they get evening meal, except obviously they don't get evening meal the day we come home, and they have to take their own lunch on the day that we go. So please make sure your child has their packed lunch for the Friday. If your child normally has a grabber bag, if you can get them to have a word with me, I'll make sure that they've sorted that. Other thing on packing, we're going for 5 days, not for 5 weeks. Particularly girls, but some of the boys. The first thing that you will encounter when you get to the field centre is a nice big flight of stairs. Yes. And when you say, can you carry my bag up there for me? We'll say, no, that's your job. So make sure your bag you can carry. Oh, I've said that already. Just a reminder about sun cream, sun hats. Oh. No strappy tops. Particularly the girls tend to have this habit of wearing very thin, like sun tops with thin straps, which are great for helping them to get sunburn if it is sunny. I'd rather we could avoid those, please, so they've got their shoulders covered and protect them. As I said before, it's hard for us to make sure your child is safe if they haven't got stuff that helps that. And hopefully there's not much anything else, because each year I keep adding bits in, but I'm sure there might be individual questions from parents. If anybody's got anything they'd like to ask overall, feel free to. And then if there's anything you want to say, you can just come and have a chat with me afterwards. Feel free to. Any questions?
Do they need bug spray?
We don't normally have an issue with bugs there. If your children go in like year 7 to Snowdonia, we get loads of midges. I've still got bites from last week, but it doesn't normally tend to be an issue. If your child is easily irritated by bugs and bites, they tend to react badly, and you want them to have spray by all means.
If someone gets hurt in a dorm and they don't like it, and they have to do it, will they get moved out?
What we need to do is make sure, if there's any combinations that we're aware of, where certain people don't get on together, then you shouldn't get put in those combinations in the first place. And actually lots of the week is about getting used to other people. It's not practical to put, like I say, if I've got a room with 14 girls, sorting out a group of 14, it doesn't really work. And it works better putting the 6s and 7s together. And perhaps it's a learning experience sometimes dealing with people that you don't really get on with and thinking about how you can get by without winding each other up and so on. But hopefully if there's somebody you particularly struggle with, then that will be taken into account. You won't be in that person's group in the first place. Okay?
You've said about no charges. If you've got a camera that just needs recharging, how?
Then we can cope with that. There's a place where we can charge them.
Okay, that's fine. And also you've got trousers. Shorts.
Shorts are allowed. They do need long trousers. Particularly, one of the areas we walk through, I think on the Monster Trail, at certain times of the year there's an issue with ticks and so on potentially, and therefore long trousers they're told to wear because of that. The Twilight Safari I'd also recommend long trousers because though it's not a major problem with bugs, it just removes that. You go.
You know when it says you're allowed MP3 players?
Yep.
Are we allowed iPads like that same?
As long as it doesn't do things like have internet connectivity. If it's just a music player, that's fine. Yeah, if it plays games, we're not.
Oh my God, Mummy, I had to ruin it.
There's it. You can tell who hasn't got eye thingy. If it plays games and they don't need it, they haven't got that time. And on the bus, like I say, it causes fallouts. And actually, that's not what we want them to do. Anything else? Oh, hello.
Is the scarf and hats really necessary? Because in half the time I don't wear them in winter anyway, let alone going away from them.
How can I answer this question diplomatically? It's on the kit list.
I know, but
I would like to think that you wouldn't ring up and complain your child was cold because they hadn't taken a hat and scarf if you chose not for them to take one. I don't think if my child was going in July, I would send them with a hat and scarf. But it does say that I realise that there is, I mean, the only thing I can think of, and particularly if your child is very susceptible, that one, to the cold, when we go on we walk out to Blakeney Point, we're then catching the boat back. We've got to catch the boat back, you know, there is a place of refuge if it was ridiculous and you couldn't safely do it. But if it's cold and raining and so on, we'll be catching the boat back from Blakeney. So if your child is very susceptible to the cold, they may well want that kind of thing for their really windy day and so on. I think when you're looking at that on the list, you're probably going to use your judgment about your child, and I'm not going to check everybody's luggage to check they've got a scarf in there. Oh dear. Right. Perhaps, I know there's 2 or 3 hands up, quite happy to answer your question, but perhaps if you want to grab me individually, then that means, if it's a question that's quite important for you, but may not be for everyone else, feel free to come see me. Jeans are not very good if they get wet. That's the only reason it's on there. Again, if we're on Blakeney Point, we walk out in the morning. If your child does something silly like falls over in the marshes, they're going to be very wet. They're going to be walking around in those tight and horrible all day. If they want to have a pair of jeans for wearing at the disco, I've got no issue with that. But when we're out doing activities, they're not really the most suitable, especially if it's wet.